Welcome and thanks for joining us. My name is Peter Pursuti, and I lead the orchestrations of Gallagher's global talent and resources for the third sector. And joining me today is Dr. Jim Rice. Jim has over a 40-year career in nonprofit leadership and governance and has been with Gallagher for the past decade, working with boards, executive teams of our nonprofit tax-exempt clients in the spheres of social human services, community services, education, hospitals, and even credit unions. He currently serving on several nonprofit boards, including Children's Heart Link, Notre Dame Law School Religious Liberty Initiative, the MCD Global, the Bellwether International, Crescent Cove, which actually he even helped start. That's another great story. Uh, Several Minnesota NGOs, One Heart Health, INDRC Prague International, and ANADACH Lagos in Africa. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be with you. It's an important conversation we're going to have.
Yes, excellence in nonprofits, as I quote from your monograph that I think we're going to feature and share with our listeners. Excellence in nonprofit governance has never been more necessary as our social sector enters an era of public calls, growing public calls for better service and equally transparency. And we're really feeling it, especially here in Minnesota, where you and I both reside. And so, um, we want to start with the big picture, I believe, in terms of governance. Nonprofit boards are often described as the backbone of their organizations. From your perspective, what is the real value of good board work for nonprofits, especially in terms of mitigating risk and advancing their mission?
Yes, it's a key challenge for all of us that serve on boards and all that might be listening and participating in this brief video. I recently looked at the number of nonprofits that are wrestling with challenges in the United States. There's 1,000,008. And of course, as you know, Peter, they're distributed to all these wide array of nonprofit and tax exempt organizations. And I think the value boils down to three important words that begin with the letter R. It looks at the role and the responsibilities of these board members to look at risk, anticipating risk, mitigating risk. Second area is resourcefulness. And the third is the rigor of making decisions. And I just make some brief comments on each of those. Board members with talent are going to come into their board service with new perspectives, hopefully with diverse backgrounds and experiences, understanding the needs of the nonprofit groups that are being served by that entity, and looking at identifying risk and asking challenging questions about how to mitigate that risk. With regard to resourcefulness, it is a resource that board members can play as a sounding board to the CEO and the executive team, unique opportunities to link and nurture relationships with stakeholders and also, of course, donors. Those are so important right now, with most nonprofits in North America wrestling with a real squeeze on their financial activities. And the rigor comes with looking at the classic duties of responsibility that nonprofit board members have that are guided by state regulations and often the IRS if they're tax exempt, which many are. And that is duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of loyalty and duty of obedience to the mission. So the value, I think, Peter, comes from the role of the board in being the key champion and a conscience and a concierge for the mission of that organization. That's the essence of the value proposition, I think, for nonprofit boards.
An easy one, it seems to remember, the three R's. But we all know boards are not created equal, right? What are some examples of great practices that distinguish high performing boards from the rest?
Yes, there are many things. I think, however, for this discussion, we can focus in on 4 key practices that we see as valuable and essential to the vitality of the enterprise and the pride and the passion that board members continue to bring into their decision making. I think one is to look at a good practice is to reflect on the responsibilities that board members have and do a board self-assessment. How well are we doing against our role of protecting and promoting the mission of the organization? Assessing how well we are supporting the executive team. How well are we conducting ourselves in meetings? How passionate are we and how well informed are we with the mission of the organization? So that is the first of 4 practices, Peter, I think, is really to look at board self-assessments. The second practice that we see in all high-performing nonprofit boards is to really have role clarity, to understand the responsibilities and the role of the board chair, the committees, the committee chairs, the relationship with the CEO. And we like to capture those in a written document. It can be called a charter. We sometimes call it a governance enhancement plan. And so that really locks in and reminds people about roles and responsibilities. It's also a third important practice is to look at continuing education and to not just have good onboarding when they first join the board, but to continually embrace opportunities to advance knowledge and experiences that will help their decision making. And I think smart committees is a fourth one that's very important. Good people chairing them, good people serving, staff support, good charters, good work plans. If you drift into the fiscal year without having charters and work plans for those committees, you're going to suboptimize. And finally, I think it's important to, and this would take a whole session, but looking at competency-based governance, looking at the strategic plans, the needs that you have, and having those plans shape the knowledge, skills, and attitudes you want sitting around the board table. So that's the competency focus, and have diversity of background. That's really helpful. So I think those are 5 key practices, Peter: board self-assessment, role clarity, ongoing education, smart committees, and competency-based.
Interesting in terms of the sense of continuous improvement that exists in all of those 5 areas. We opened by saying that the nonprofit sector is facing unprecedented challenges. Just to highlight them: the constrained funding, the rising demand for services, and the increased scrutiny from stakeholders. How can boards embrace then this culture of continuous governance enhancement to stay effective and relevant in these times?
It's essential to look at that. I think there are 4 ways to embrace a clear understanding of continuous improvement, continuous enhancement, that governance enhancement strategy that I made reference to before. The first is to stay informed about trends and challenges in this nonprofit marketplace, the niche, the industry that it might be engaged in, and to rely on the CEO and the executive team to provide almost at every meeting a briefing on trends, opportunities, challenges, and threats and risks that are facing the enterprise, that nonprofit. I think the second initiative that we're finding important is to bring speakers in to keep the board informed and to understand the activities that are going to be important for continuous improvement. And those speakers can be from the executive team, they can be from beneficiaries of the organization, they can also be from other nonprofits to share how they approach their work and their embrace of continuous enhancement. Smart meetings is another way to do that. If every one of your meetings has this kind of an agenda: report from CEO, report from CFO, report from quality officer, report from compliance officer, report from committees. And then when people are almost brain dead, you expect to have some high quality strategic dialogue and conversations. That's not a healthy agenda. So we like to have smart meetings and look at the whole year and find out certain times of the year when you can do deeper dives on certain topics, inviting in speakers that relate to some of those key themes of uh, beneficiary needs, services, human resource requirements. Funding is always an issue there. And make sure the agenda in your meeting planning allows dialogue and open conversations about all of those. The last comment I would make, Peter, is that um, many individuals serving on boards have colleagues in other nonprofits. We find it helpful to mix it up. You can go give a presentation at another nonprofit board, inviting your colleagues that you know into your board and share how they're approaching the challenge of continuous improvement or governance enhancement writ
Mhm.
large.
Outstanding, Jim. The 3 R's, the 5 key practices, the 4 strategies for continuous improvement. I've added a last here one to talk about all of that. We've got great resources to give you, but there's also this mindset of resourcefulness. Can you
Yes.
just unpack that a little bit in terms of what it means to be a resourceful nonprofit board and executive leadership, board member and executive leadership?
Yes. We could have added another R, which is to be resilient and vital as a nonprofit organization. You need to involve resourcefulness. So let's look at the resources a successful nonprofit needs. It needs talent. It needs stakeholder relationships. Sometimes it needs political advocacy and image or brand development. Another resource is money, of course, but it's not just financial resources. There has to be an agility that goes with that resourcefulness. And that comes with how the board engages with the executive team and other stakeholders and partners to define a strategic plan. And how flexible and agile and resourceful can the board be in its partnership with the executive team to execute and prosecute that strategic plan. All those dimensions, I think, are important elements or features of a resourceful board and resourcefulness, Peter.
Outstanding. And thank you, Jim, for all your talent sharing, if you will, and you're acting as a subject matter expert within our nonprofit practice and supporting so many of our talent and their boards around the world.
My pleasure. Thank you all.